And most of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to come here and speak here about what has become my favorite topic. I am a radiation biologist by upbringing, and we are doing in my department radiobiological research. But for the last 10 years I have been more and more delving into the issues of ethics of radiological protection or of environmental health in general, and even to the extent that I have gone back to university and taken a number of courses and written seminar works and essays and exams and so on in philosophy, to not speak about something that I don't know anything about. So my point of departure is that the last century, this has been implicit in many of the presentations given today, the last century has witnessed an unprecedented globalization, and many societal issues appear in a different light from what they appeared, let's say, around 1900 or 1850 or whatever. Radiological protection is a global issue and has been from its very beginning, and will certainly continue to be so in the future. And we must therefore make sure that the values and principles of radiological protection are understandable and acceptable around the world. Just a few examples of this international nature of the endeavor. The X-rays were discovered 1895 in my hometown, not in my hometown, but Mr. Röntgen was from my hometown, so I'm proud of that. Anyway, 1 year later we had X-ray use in diagnostics in a number of countries in what you would call the Western world, but also in the Republic of China, Japan, and then 2 years later, 2 years after the discovery, in Malaysia, South Africa, then I think Korea comes in 1913, yeah. And so from the very beginning, this was not a matter of Europe and North America, but from the very beginning, X-rays were used, medical use of radiation was all over the world. And I don't know if at that time there was any discussion of whether the values that would drive the application of X-rays would be Western values or global values. Probably not. If you look at nuclear power, then of course you could say it's a more a Western issue of Europe and North America. Of the worldwide 434 nuclear power reactors, we have only 115 in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But that is gradually changing. Of the 64 reactors that are under construction, 43, so 2/3, are in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And of the ones planned, which is 160, 102 are outside Europe and North America. So the balance is gradually shifting. It's not a matter of the Western world, if you call Europe and North America that. Of course, this globalization has also been reflected in a number of declarations, statements, documents that have been produced mostly under the guidance of the United Nations. You know the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 48. There's also the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. We refer to specific needs or requirements of children today in 59. Then there are declarations on human environment and the connection between environment and development, which is in 72 and in 92. The last one is the Rio Summit on Environment and Development. And we also have at least two, this is just a number of examples, we have two declarations produced by UNESCO on the human genome and human rights, and on bioethics and human rights. And some people have argued that these already constitute common heritage of mankind. So in a way, this is already a global basis of ethics. Just a few voices from philosophy. In my manuscript, I have a few more, but just to show you that this is also discussed by people in philosophy. Jürgen Habermas is, at least in Germany, is the leading social philosopher, and I think he is also more and more recognized in other parts of the world. He has written in 98 that world citizenship is already taking shape today in worldwide political communications. So it's not a matter that we think of it for the future, but it is already taking shape. Cicela Bock in 95 has made that more concrete and has said that there are certain basic values that are necessary to collective survival and therefore constitute a minimalist set of such values which can be recognized across societal and other boundaries. So she claims that because human societies need certain values to survive, these survival necessary values are the same all over the world, and we can recognize them across societal and other boundaries. Kwame Appiah, who is a British Ghanaian philosopher teaching in America, I forgot where, anyway, one of the Ivory League universities, he also says, yes, there is a common universal truth, but we also need to respect diversity of culture. And with respect to the universal truth, maybe we can say that, yes, it exists, but we are less certain what if we have it already. So maybe we have to discuss more where that universal truth or that common moral or that common ethics is. So my first conclusion from these very brief considerations is that the system of radiological protection must be based on values and principles which are shared across culture. It is an international endeavor, and the world on a whole is in the process of globalization, so we can't ignore that. You have heard that the Task Group 94 on ethics of radiological protection has identified 4 core values, which in the document will be shown to have permeated the system of radiological protection from its beginning. These are beneficence and non-maleficence, prudence, justice, and human dignity. And of course, for many people that are familiar with bioethics, that rings a bell because these core values are similar to, although not identical with, the principles of biomedical ethics of Beecham and Childers. They came out with their principles of biomedical ethics in '79. The book has now reached, I think, the 7th edition, so it's widely recognized as one of the major, maybe the major system of biomedical ethics. And here we have a similar set of values: respect for autonomy, which is a bit narrower but related to human dignity. Then non-maleficence and beneficence are numbered there as individual, independent values or principles, and justice, the same as in the TG 94 suggestion. What is not here, but what TG 94 has recognized as an important additional principle for radiation protection is prudence. Now, Beecham and Childers think of their principles as part of a common morality. That's their claim. And they write in, I think, one of the later editions, not in the very first edition, they write that these principles are not relative to cultures or individuals because the system, the set of principles, it transcends both. However, we have to say that Beecham and Childers are not at all interested in the sources of this common morality. They just claim, they write that all persons committed to morality would agree with these 4 principles. And I find that insufficient. I mean, this is a nice claim, but are we sure that all persons committed to morality would really buy into that system. In my view, fundamental orientation has been provided throughout the ages by the written and oral traditions of the different cultures, and these continue to be of great influence. So although our Western society is very much secularized, of course, still the values transmitted by Christianity play a big role, although people might not be that aware of it. I have tried to show that the principles of biomedical ethics are indeed endorsed by the sacred scriptures of all the world's great religions, by the works of philosophers such as Aristotle and Confucius, as well as the oral traditions of indigenous peoples. And this has been published 2 years ago in a volume edited by Sven-Ove Hansen and Deborah Outen. So what I think that tells us is that similar to the principles of biomedical ethics, the core values of radiation protection need to be shown to be backed up by the written and oral traditions around the world. I wouldn't like to go and do an opinion poll everywhere in the world, because I think that's too fluid, that depends too much on political issues and concrete life situations. I think we have to go back to these traditions which have provided guidance. And we do find these core values in different traditions. Of course, I can't give a full review here. I will only give you for each core value just 3 examples, and I hope that you will believe me that I could come up with more examples from other cultures. So it has been mentioned that to do good and to do no harm is part of the Hippocratic Oath. So it comes from the Old Greek background. If you look at the Talmud, Jewish summary of different writings, it says there that to save one life is tantamount to saving the whole world, which I think gives you, again, do good and do no harm. Or in Islamic jurisprudence, you even have this weighing of the two. It says there that if a less substantial instance of harm and an outweighing benefit are in conflict, the harm is forgiven for the sake of the benefit. And that's what we have applied over the centuries in medicine, because in order to do good to somebody, for instance, to operate a cancer, you have to do harm first. You have to make a cut into that person, or you have to irradiate that person with high doses. So you do harm, but you hope that on balance, the doing good, the benefit is outweighing the harm. And that is reflected in this statement. The second principle is the principle of prudence, or we might also say precaution, but I think prudence is a bit wider than precaution. Precaution is focusing very much on being cautious, and prudence is taking in all the benefits as well, or the societal and economic factors as well. That's my understanding of prudence. We would have to discuss that as well. But let's say prudence, precaution. Confucius is reported to have said that the cautious seldom err, so it is always, may always be good to be a bit more cautious. Krishna, I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita itself, says, act like a person in fear before the cause of fear actually presents itself. So you think of what could come up and you act as if you had fear before you actually see it. And then there's a very nice oral tradition in Islam, which I like. Prophet Muhammad is supposed to have said, tie up your camel first and then put your trust in God. The story is that there was somebody that came to listen to a sermon by the Prophet, and he left his camel outside. And when he came out, the camel was gone. So he went back to the Prophet and said, what is this? I listened to your Prophet, and God doesn't look after my camel, that it runs away, and I have the negative consequence of that. And the Prophet said, well, tie up your camel first and then trust in God. So, prudent. Justice, of course, is not only, but very much based on reciprocity. we can also show the word or the concept of justice in different cultural traditions, but I have selected here a few expressions of reciprocity, which has been mentioned before. So this is the golden rule: hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. This is from the Buddha. Or Confucius says, never impose on others what you would not choose for yourself. Or this both is seeing the negative side, do not do to others, but in the New Testament, Jesus Christ words it positively. Therefore, whatever you want people to do for you, do the same for them. So this is all expressions of negative or positive reciprocity, and that is one of the bases for equity. When we look at human dignity, of course, we could argue that when we see the reality in societies around the world, dignity is not always and everywhere respected, but it is again in the old scriptures. In one of the again in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "I am the same in all beings. In a Brahma, highest caste, or an outcast, the wise see the same thing." Maybe the reality of the Indian caste system with the centuries was a bit different, but actually here in the origin, it says both have human dignity, whatever their position in society is. In the Western religions, Christianity, Judaism, it is more expressed in the thought of we are all creatures of one God. So do we have not all one Father? Has not one God created us? Is in the book of Malachi in the Old Testament. And to also quote a younger religious tradition, Baha'i faith, "Ye are all the leaves of one tree and the drops of one ocean." So these are different ways of expressing that one aspect, again, of human dignity, namely that all human beings have the same dignity that we should respect. And this is my conclusion from that part: the 4 core values of radiological protection, those 4 that the TG94 has identified, can indeed be found in the written and oral traditions of different cultures. There are also procedural values that TG94 suggests, and there may be 5, there may be 3. I suppose I propose 4 here. You will see which 4 I have focused on. So there's a question mark with the 4. We can discuss that. But certainly transparency is one of the 3 or 5 that TG94 has identified. Transparency is honesty, truthfulness, trustworthiness in the classical language of religions. So the Mahabharata, one of the old Hindu scriptures, says it is always proper to speak the truth. Or Confucius, every day I examine myself, have I always been true to my word? Or Jesus Christ in the, I think it's Luke, no, it's Matthew. But let your communication be yeah, nay, nay, for whatever is more than that, then these cometh of evil. So straightforward transparency. Accountability is also one of the 3 or 5 suggested by TG94. The noble person places demands upon himself. The petty person blames others. That's Confucius. And again, of course, in the Western religious tradition, it is more a matter of responsibility vis-a-vis a higher authority. So here in Jeremiah, it says, I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. That's a different way of expressing accountability, in this case to a higher authority, but in the effect it will be the same. Or again, a tradition from Islam, each of you is a guardian and is responsible for those whom he is in charge of. That's accountability. Stakeholder involvement, you wouldn't think that is that in the different cultures. I mean, That sounds very much like a democratic approach, including many people and so on. And of course, it has not been the reality over the centuries in many cultures that people would be involved in decision-making or in consultation. But again, you do see in many traditions a respect for this kind of participatory approach. For instance, the Rig Veda, which is one of the oldest Hindu scriptures, meet together, speak together, may your counsel be common, your assembly common, common the mind. So, yes, don't make decisions alone, but involve others. Second, I like very much Shotoku Taishi, probably I pronounce it wrongly, but he was, as far as I know, the first Buddhist ruler of Japan, and he said, when big things are at stake, many should discuss and clarify the matter together, so the correct way may be found. So it's especially related to big things, to difficult decisions where you have to take in the opinion of many people. And again, from the Baha'i faith, take ye counsel together in all matters, inasmuch as consultation is the lamp of guidance. All matters. It's not a matter of here and there you may consult, but consultation should be something that you use everywhere. And this is my question mark. I would like to suggest, and we have discussed it to some extent in the TG 94, that we should expressly mention empathy as one of the procedural values. Because it's not only about involving people, it is also taking them seriously, putting your foot into their moccasins, as the last word here, the last proverb quote says, never criticize a man until you have walked a mile in his moccasins. This is a Native American proverb. But there's also similar statements, not using the word empathy, mainly not using the word empathy, but loving kindness or compassion, indicating that, yes, you should think of the other person as if you were in their shoes. Loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity are the four sublime attitudes of Buddhism. And in the Talmud, again, loving kindness is greater than laws, and the charities of life are more than all ceremonies. If we did that, if we included empathy, it sounds like a bit like, come on, we are doing science and technology here, but what is empathy to do with it? But I think we would be in line with the cutting edge of many other areas. For instance, in urban development and in industrial design, there's a lot of talk nowadays about empathy-driven design. So you cannot design a process, you cannot design a city, you cannot design a product without first empathizing with the customer, with the user of that product, or with the one that is to be living in that town. You cannot plan things for people, you have to plan things with people. And again, you could say this is part of stakeholder involvement. I think it would be good to explicitly mention empathy because it gives a different drive, a different perspective to stakeholder involvement. It's not talking to them, but talking with them. So, again, my conclusion from that part, the four procedural values, at least the three that are there, I'm not so sure about reasonability and tolerability. I don't even think they are really the same kind of procedural values that the other three. But anyway, these procedural values, again, can be shown to belong to the written and oral traditions of mankind. Not all to the same extent, but we can find them there. And finally, I have 2 minutes to say my last words. The values underlying radiological protection as the principles of biomedical ethics have prima facie validity. That is, they apply as long as there is no conflict between them. So I apply human dignity, I apply justice as long as there is no conflict between them, but there might be situations where they come into conflict, and then I need to balance them. I have to decide for that concrete situation which of the two is to prevail. sometimes it is the one, sometimes the other, and that is a matter of discussion in Beecham and Childers' book. I think this is where cultural specificity can come in, because not everybody everywhere in the world will give the same answer to the question, which value should prevail. They all share, I think, they all share the same core values and the same procedural values, but how to balance them may be seen differently in different countries. Just an example, should we ignore a patient's reluctance to having another X-ray examination and impose it on him or her anyway, because we know it will allow us to better assess therapy options? It's a very primitive question, I know, but just as an example, you see here a conflict between beneficence and human dignity. Human dignity would tell you you have to respect the will of the patient, whatever. Beneficence would say that, okay, I should maybe ignore it, at least to some extent, because I know it will be good for him to find out with this diagnostic procedure what actually the problem is. And this balance may be different, let's say, in Korea and the Czech Republic, my current home country, because these two values have different weights. Both values are recognized in both countries, but they have different weight. And that's the end of my talk. I think that making the values underlying radiological protection explicit and assessing their cross-cultural validity will help us decide where to accept the plurality of approaches and where not, where we have to balance and look at the specific interpretation of one or the other core values in this or that culture. Sorry for having overdrawn 50 seconds.